Welcome to the Beacon 1% Better Everyday podcast. I'm RJ Malik, your producer, and today Chip Kispert sits down with Sid Yenamandra, CEO and founder of SurgeONE.ai, the industry's first AI-native platform built to unify compliance, cybersecurity, and data infrastructure for broker-dealers, RIAs, and regulated financial institutions. Right now, here's Chip.
Sid, my friend, welcome.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you, Chip.
I love having you on the show. I always learn something new, and I'm excited to kind of get into the conversation today. I'm sure we'll meander into some terrific subjects, and you'll increase our listeners' knowledge in the compliance space. So first off, though, congratulations on winning the Mary Blackburn Challenge at our Compliance Roundtable.
Oh, thank you, Chip. Excited about that.
And you directed the donation to Silicon Valley Down Syndrome Network. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we have someone very close to us in our family that has Down syndrome, and they do excellent work. I've actually been to many of their events, and not only are they focused on education, they just create a community for these kids and adults to really thrive, people that have Down syndrome. I'll tell you, we're blessed to have somebody like that in our family because they just make our life so much better on a daily basis. It kind of gives you a sense of what's important and what's
absolutely
beyond everything that we're all sort of used to on a daily basis and the daily grind. Kind of helps you kind of bring you back to your roots. So I just thought, they'd be a great organization to contribute to.
That's great. Happy to contribute there. And we're going to kind of transition the conversation here. But I want to get into some of the compliance technology that you've been working on. One of the things that, we've known each other for over a decade, I think now. But you were at Entrada before.
Yep.
And now you started SurgeONE. And you've been reimagining compliance technology for wealth management firms. So I'd love to kind of dive into that. And I want to start with kind of a wide open question. Why did you decide to open SurgeONE?
It's an excellent question, Chip. And it's something you and I have talked about quite a bit over the years. I think at the core, we saw a huge opportunity to help financial services firms, particularly RIAs and broker-dealers, kind of get out of the dark ages from a technology perspective and leverage all of the cutting-edge modern capabilities, particularly around AI, to help drive better compliance outcomes, better operational efficiency, but ultimately better risk outcomes for organizations. And I think, 5 to 10 years ago when I started Entrada, actually 2012, we actually started the company with the simplistic vision of focusing specifically just on one slice of compliance, which was cybersecurity, right? And, cybersecurity has a compliance angle to it, but it also has a security angle to it. But in the RIA broker-dealer workflow, it's the compliance angle that oftentimes drives the conversation. Although for some organizations, that conversation is different. So we saw a lot of firms getting fragmented technologies, right? So they were putting together a piecemeal solution set of, compliance for cyber, compliance for marketing and ad review, branch audit, policies and procedures, code of ethics, and, all the submodules that go as part of code of ethics. And you really didn't need all of these slices. At the end of the day, the RIA wants to focus on their core business. The broker-dealer wants to focus on their core business. You don't want to spend all your time in the back office. And so we saw a better future. And I basically incubated SurgeONE.ai in 2022, October. And we actually launched as a fund, if you recall, Chip. Mm-hmm. We saw an opportunity to not just, not to build everything ourselves, but to really partner with the right companies that have key ingredient technology that we could ingest, but just build the things that we did need to build and sort of put together a solution set. And that's kind of what we've done with SurgeONE.ai.
Let me just, kind of ask that question of, so what's different from 2012 to 2026 as you're looking at running a company?
Excellent question. I mean, I look at 2026, and by the way, we're only halfway through, not even. Right.
Right.
And I already feel like we reinvented the way we are doing business month over month since the beginning of 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, I mean, fundamentally different in the way you imagine how products are built, you imagine the market opportunity, how you operationalize the business, how you brainstorm. I mean, I'll just recall, right? 2012, circa 2012, my co-founder and I would sit around the table and we would hypothesize and say, okay, we know that wealth firms need to figure out how they manage cybersecurity, but what within cybersecurity do you need to work on? And then we would spend weeks to collect data to try to, triangulate the answer, right? And then we'd sit together and we'd say, okay, what's the solution? And then one of us would come up with a solution, or we'd bring in our team and we'd come up with the solution set. Then we'd poke holes at it. And then that would take a month. And then a month later, we would take another 3 months to come up with what does an MVP have to look like? And then you have to go find the team to go build it. You have to go recruit them, or you find an outsourced team. And then it would take them 9 months to go build the MVP, the minimum viable product. And then things took from the time you conceived a concept and you really locked down on that concept to when you saw your first prototype, it took 18 months, maybe 2 years in some cases.
Yep.
And now you got to go back and rethink your assumptions. Were my assumptions 18 months ago accurate? And am I playing the Wayne Gretzky move correctly? Am I skating to where the puck is? Right? Well, now in 2026, I think we're sort of in an instant gratification economy.
Very much so.
Right?
Very much so.
But it's not just you, it's your competition.
Absolutely.
Right? So the problem has shifted. It's no longer, okay, how fast do I think up the idea? How fast do I execute on the idea? And how do I test it? Well, there's a lot of smart people, and there's a lot of smart people vibe coding their way into new solutions, right?
I know nothing about that.
So the speed at which you're moving today is lightning fast compared to the way we were moving before. And so I think it's great on one hand, but it's also nerve-wracking because everyone's got to be moving faster.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to shift a bit, right? And one of the things is you're bringing this compliance tech to the marketplace, and the tools that you have. When a firm goes through a regulatory exam now, how do they go through it with your help?
Yeah, two things. One of the most important things that we're seeing with regulatory exams now is they're very much data-driven and risk-driven. A firm has a lot of different elements of risk, but it's how you quantify the risk. It's how you evaluate the risk for your organization and how you put the policies and the procedures to curtail that risk is where the bulk of the work is.
Mm-hmm.
And so back in the day, right, or if you look at the legacy way of doing this, a lot of it was forms driven. A lot of it was driven by templates, firms doing what they were doing because that's always how they did it, right? And then they would instantiate a compliance program or a risk program based on what they've always done. And then they would collect some data and try to sort of validate, what they thought they should do with what they think they're doing, and then try to address the gaps, right? Well, that's not the way regulatory exams are now being done. And we don't envision that as being the future. The future is is you first start by collecting signals within your organization and automatically risk tiering it, right? And then based on your risk tiers, you're able to actually map your risk to your obligations. So simultaneously, you need to know what your obligations are. What are your SEC obligations? What are the type of business that you have? So it's all data driven. And so the ability to be able to do all of those things, we're able to collect the signals and identify your obligations and put a plan that actually meets that continuously is way different than the reactive model that existed before.
Absolutely. And, it's fascinating because as we go in on consulting engagements and do different work, we watch these firms they're not in that world yet.
That's right.
And it's, very difficult, very time consuming. It's almost like they're being guided by gut instinct.
Correct.
I just find that, it's interesting because the solutions that are coming out now, and yours as we focus on are just moving the work of compliance forward so they can be more thorough,
more data driven. Now, I'll tell you this. That's just one component of it, right? Having a unified data driven solution set, a holistic platform, if you will, versus piecemealed, cobbled together, reactive compliance, leveraging advice from consultants because they've been doing something in a certain way for ages. That's legacy. And then there's a number of companies now focusing on, okay, now let's just build a comprehensive, holistic platform where you can do everything in one place, make it data driven. Well, that's just one component of it. The second component of this is probably a little bit more important, which is once you've got a system that tells you what you need to do, how do you know that what it's telling you is actually accurate, right? So the experts in the loop, not just humans, but the ability to combine a great product, a holistic platform that's data-driven.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to use the word, I promised myself not to use the word AI, but I'm going to use the word data-driven because I just feel like at the root of it, it's an expert system that's rooted in data.
Yes.
Okay. But if it's not reviewed by a qualified human, the system breaks. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're walking on both feet, right? Where we've got the experts and we've spent a lot of time acquiring talent in that area. And then we've got this holistic platform. We put those together, and that really, at the end of the day, drives better risk, better compliance outcomes.
So if we look back actually currently, right, we look at most wealth firms don't really have good data.
That's right.
So the reporting is going to be biased or skewed based on that data.
That's right.
How is a wealth firm supposed to fix that?
Excellent question. And in fact, that's a question. I just came back from United Planners financial conference in Phoenix. And we had an opportunity to talk to reps, a lot of reps. And it was funny, we were talking about model quality and LLMs and Gemini versus Claude and ChatGPT and, hallucination rates and the ability for models to be able to tell time. But the real root of the question is the question you just asked, which is even before we start getting into, model quality and hallucination rates, you got to start with a good data set. Because if you don't have a good data set, none of that matters, right? And too often firms don't actually understand that. But I think the question is very pertinent. Well, so I think most organizations today have a data challenge, as we've talked about this for years.
Yeah,
right. I think we're in a better position now to be able to do something about it. So number one, every organization today should be inventorying all of their data. They should first know where their data resides. Is it in their CRM? Is it in their portfolio management software? Is it in Redtail for CRM, Salesforce? Is it sitting in a Google share drive? Hopefully not. Is it sitting in your other vendors that you use within your firm? How do you aggregate your data? How do you tabulate all your data sources? How do you bring it into a data lake house of sorts? How do you cleanse it? How do you normalize it? How do you separate client data from organizational data? How do you label it? And all of that work, which is really, down in the, in the bowels of data infrastructure, is really where the journey begins.
I absolutely agree. But how does a firm go from where they are, right, to actually having that data that can drive the business and protect the business? Because they're in a spot where it's not very good, and they got a lot of disparate sources, and bringing it all together is daunting for these firms.
Look, I think number one, find an expert, find a data expert, look for a resource, right? I mean, certainly this is one of our core tenets at SurgeOne, but there's a number of great companies that do that, right? I mean, identify a data expert, whether that's an internal resource or via an internal resource, you identify a third-party expert that can come in and do an assessment. Where are you in your data journey? And so a lot of these things that we just talked about, which is identifying, the data sources, putting together a data strategy, putting together your digital transformation from yesterday's desperate solutions to, an AI enabled organization, right? That digital transformation path, you got to work with the experts that have done that over and over again, who can come in and see patterns, right?
Yeah.
The good news is where we live today and where the solutions have sort of evolved to, there are great answers for this. And it's not going to break the bank.
Right.
Most organizations can actually evolve and digitally transform from, the legacy way of doing things to a much more data-enabled organization. And so we're seeing this across the board. So I'd say find an expert.
Good advice. Always reach out to a consultant, right?
That's right. Got to think where I can find one, but yes.
In your mind, is the SEC and FINRA kind of making AI governance a first tier exam priority looking forward?
The answer is yes. I mean, if you've been to any of the SEC, FINRA, or NSCP or FSI discussions lately, where a lot of compliance people get together or regulators are coming together, probably the number one conversation that everyone's been having in late 2025 and 2026 is, what does an AI governance framework look like? Who's your AI czar within your organization? Who's the chief AI officer that has been tagged with the responsibility of AI governance, right? I mean, I don't know if you saw this, but President Trump just unveiled the AI governance initiative for any new AI company that's putting out a new model. It actually has to go through the US government, right? And this was something that, they swore they wouldn't do, and they've done an about face now, right? So it just tells you where the risks are, where the concerns are for a lot of the folks and a lot of the regulators, right? So it's definitely coming down the stack. But FINRA and the SEC have actually put out in their most recent circulars some of the questions that they intend to ask firms, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is a firm using AI? What models are they using? Inventorying every model and the use of it. How are they testing it? What kind of data is being fed into these models? How is that data being tested and cleansed? Who's reviewing the outputs? How do you make sure that the AI is not hallucinating and that somebody is actually looking at the AI and saying, yep, that result makes sense, this result doesn't? So a lot of this has actually been codified. Now, how organizations are collecting this evidence and how they're doing it, that's a whole different story.
Gotcha. So our podcast is 20 minutes. So we got to start kind of winding it down. Loved your comments. And I asked that previous question because I know you wrote an article about it in March. And that gave me some good fodder for walking through that with you. But hey, I love you. You love looking at the industry and you love studying this industry. So who are 2 or 3 people or firms doing the right work now that you really admire? And why are they worth watching?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I got to be careful. This is like one of those moments where you go up on the Oscars and you receive the award, and you often worry about who you've forgotten to thank. Not that I've had any experience doing that, but it just reminds me of that when you ask.
Mm-hmm.
But look, so the way I'll answer that is there are firms that I'm actually deeply engaged with, that I'm always impressed with how they think about a variety of problems, right? So more than individuals, let me cite the organizations. And then there's other organizations that we aspire to work with and or are in early sort of days of having conversations, let's just say, but we just love the thinking, right? So 2 buckets. So in the first bucket,
Mm-hmm.
Organizations like Aaron at United Planners, I said I wouldn't name a name, but I will. And it's fresh in my mind because I'm just coming back from their conference. And, I've always found Aaron to be extremely smart, very well ahead of his time in terms of looking at where the industry is sort of going in this area. And I got to tell you, with some of their Rep 2.0 initiatives, Rep 3.0 initiatives, they've been ahead of the curve in a lot of different areas. There's a lot of work, but they've been very, I think they're looking at the industry the right way in terms of efficiency, consolidation of systems. So that's one organization that I've always been impressed with. Sanctuary Wealth is another one, right? Adam Malamet, one of the smartest guys that I've seen in the industry. I think he's put together a phenomenal team, and they're growing like a weed. But some of the work that they're doing on the back end, just in terms of the infrastructure, we continue to see sort of evolve. And then on the larger side, firms like RayJ, firms like LPL, are taking a slightly different tact, right? So you've got the RayJ with a lot of the in-house capability in the investments, which is not necessarily outsourcing a lot of the build out, but doing it all in-house and keeping the data in-house. Very impressive. I think they are in many ways representative of a class of companies.
Mm-hmm.
LPL's got an amazing challenge, right? Given the number of firms that they've got on their platform. We're seeing some of the work that they've been doing. So continue to be impressed with some of the work that they've been doing. So these are some of the firms, different sizes, different scale, but these are the guys that we look at.
Well, thank you for that. As we close the show, I always like to do our 1% better flash and give you 90 seconds off the cuff to share a message, to go down a path that you want to go down. So without further ado, I hand the mic to you. Thank
you, Chip. Wow. Yeah. So 1% better day by day, right? I think that's a great motto. I'll answer that in 2 ways. All right. And this would be my message. As a person, as a leader, I challenge myself on a daily basis as to how do I drive the organization, execute to a vision point better every day than I did yesterday or the months prior. What can I do with all the technology, all the tools, all of the knowledge that we currently have to be able to leverage that, harness it quickly, to be able to put together my top 3 execution paths for the next, for the next week, the next day. So the to-dos are driven, very data driven, and there's a lot of tools that allow people to do that. I think organizationally, if I think about it from a client perspective, I think the organizations that are going to be successful in this day and age are going to be the ones that do the same thing, which is not be bogged down with the legacy, but look at the future of possibility and be able to sort of, think about what's available to them today and be able to kind of just improve their organization 1% better, improve their team 1% better, whether those are tools, whether those are people, the right mindset. It can all be done. I think we live in a different age now, and the speed at which we can execute is way, way different, right, than it's ever been.
It's incredibly fast right now. And I can't go into that as anymore. Let's put it that way, because it's shocking how fast things are moving. Sid, how do people get in touch with you when they've listened to the podcast and want to get in touch with you or Surge?
Anybody that wants to reach out to us, it's easy. Sid at SurgeONE.ai, or drop me a note on LinkedIn. And I promise you, we're very good at responses. We will be on it. I'm sure Chip is chuckling, but we're trying to be 1% better at that every day.
Fabulous. Sid, thank you for being on the podcast. Absolutely love having you on the show. You shared some great things with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chip.
Wow. RJ, what a great conversation with Sid.
Lots of information. And as we were talking before we started this, just the tip of the iceberg.
That is a day in my life talking about that. But it's amazing how much detail the wealth management business really demands. It's quite profound.
And what stood out to me is when he was talking, he talked about the reactive model and how that's done because of what's going on with AI. It's you can't sit back. And when he was describing the process of going through the system, that would take like 18 months. I was just shaking my head going, wow. I mean,
look back and, you look back even farther and it would take years.
Right.
Or everything was done manually. How about that?
Yes. And the speed is mind boggling. What are your points?
I came away with 3 thoughts, and the first one is, compliance is really becoming continuous and data-driven. It's fascinating as we're talking to firms because, they're trying to get there versus kind of being reactive and having that gut feeling that I said on the show. Number 2, let's go back to basics. It's funny because we talked about this on the Pershing panel I was at this week. Firms need clean and organized data before, they can actually leverage a lot of those proactive tools. And AI can be very useful without hallucinating. And then the 3 I kind of looked at, the best outcomes come from pairing technology with expert human oversight. The human has to be involved in this.
Yeah, that stood out to me too when he mentioned that. And I think I'm hearing that more and more, that with AI, it's not a substitute. It's just a really, really excellent tool.
It is. It also takes a lot of work. Everybody thinks it's going to do everything for you. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work and good data. So, all right, time to wrap up. And before I leave, to quote Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. This is Chip Kispert wishing you well until the next episode of the Beacon 1% Better Everyday podcast.
All right, Chip, and we need to add in a shout out as this podcast is brought to you by Beacon Strategies, LLC, the go-to resource for roundtables, consulting, and services that support wealth management firms and their providers. If you need some industry perspective or help, please visit beaconstrategiesllc.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Beacon 1% Better podcast. We ask you to share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review because this actually helps others find the podcast. Again, thank you for listening, and for Chip Kispert and everyone at Beacon Strategies, I'm RJ Malik, and we look forward to you joining us for our next podcast.